in order to understand the mind, we've opened our minds to see what hasn't been glimpsed, to break through into new levels of discovery. We ask questions that drive research today so that it may become the cures of tomorrow. We are explorers who delve into the most complex structure known to man so that our most challenging questions can be solved, and committed to discover the treatments that turn mental illness into mental health. We envision a day when Alzheimer's is a distant memory, when autism is just another human variation, when depression is overcome, addictions are released, and a paradigm shift in beliefs erases the pain of stigma. We are at the forefront of grasping the biology of genius and creativity and the complex links between the mind and body, bringing together extraordinary minds across disciplines, interacting to find the answers that can heal our most human challenges, and training the next generation to go even further. This is the center of a revolution in neuroscience. Here, we strive to open our minds even further, because we must.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Goodman, and on behalf of the Friends of the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior at UCLA, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's Open Minds screening of the critically acclaimed new documentary film, Cracked Up, about the effects of childhood trauma on the life of Saturday Night legendary star Darrell Hammond. The film is produced and directed by Michelle Esrick. I hope you enjoyed our short film about the world-renowned Semel Institute. The Friends is proud to be the philanthropic support group for this world-renowned institute, which is one of the leading centers for the study of the mind, brain, and behavior, where over 350 clinicians and researchers work collaboratively to develop new cures for illnesses of the mind and brain that affect over 46.6 million people every year in this country alone. We are very fortunate this evening to have in our audience, you just saw him on the film, the director of the Semel Institute, Dr. Peter Wybrow. We are honored that he's taken his night off to spend his night with us. In Cracked Up, we witnessed the tremendous impact, devastating pain, and suffering that childhood trauma can have on a person. We are thrilled that Darrell Hammond is going to be with us here this evening to participate in the post-screening discussion, which will immediately follow the film. He will be in discussion with Michelle Esrick, the filmmaker, and with Dr. Robert Pineus, who is a professor of psychiatry in the Department of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences here at UCLA. He is also the co-director of the National Center for Child Traumatic Stress and the director of the UCLA Trauma Psychiatry Service. And we are very grateful to Dr. Pineus for coming here this evening to share his knowledge and expertise with us. A little bit about the Friends of the Semel Institute for those of you who are here for the first time this evening. We, as I said, we're the philanthropic support group for the Semel Institute. We sponsor the Open Mind, which is the community lecture and film series that tonight's program is part of. We bring together thought leaders in culture and science to present programs about mental health issues as a free public service to the community. We also support research through our Friends Scholar Research Grant Program, which supports the careers of young neuroscientists who are at the beginning of their careers and are going to be at the forefront of new discoveries in mental illness and mental wellness. This is only possible because of the support of our members, audience members like you. If you have already joined the Friends, we are very grateful for your support. If you have not yet joined, this is the end of year, the spirit of giving. So we know many organizations reach out to you at this time of year. We hope that you will consider joining the Friends and supporting this Open Mind and our Scholar program. We really depend, much like NPR or public radio or public television, we really depend on the support of our members. So we really appreciate it. You can go on our website, friendsofthesemelinstitute.org. You will find information there about making a donation. You'll also find our calendar of upcoming events. We have another Open Mind on Tuesday about bipolar disorder, so I hope to see some of you there. You can also pick up an envelope on your way out. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the director and producer of Cracked Up, Michelle Esrick. She is a poet, activist, and a filmmaker, and we are so grateful to Michelle for coming all the way from New York. And I'm sorry we didn't bring you better sunny California weather. This might be familiar to you, being a New Yorker, but welcome to Los Angeles, and thank you for making this incredible film about childhood trauma and the effects it has. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Vicki, and to Wendy Kelman and Vicki Goodman for organizing this incredible evening. I feel so grateful to be here and really incredibly honored to be invited by the Semel Institute. When I called Darrell to say, we've been invited to UCLA Semel Institute, you know, we both felt really, really honored to be here with you all because you're doing incredible, incredible work. I'm so happy that we're gathered together. We need to gather more in circles and be in front of each other. We can't feel our five senses on our cell phones and when we're texting. So I like to just say, take a moment to look to the person next to you and say hello. Make a connection. So what I've discovered and what I truly believe is connection is the opposite of trauma. And connection is the opposite of addiction. And connection is the opposite of loneliness. And empathy and love and compassion is the opposite of addiction and of suicide. When I started the film, I was inspired when Darrell told me his doctor told him, after 40 years of being misdiagnosed, he said, I don't want you to call what you have a mental illness. Let me start over. I don't want you to call what you have a mental illness. I want you to call it a mental injury. And that blew my mind. And I felt my own shame from my own trauma, which I wasn't calling it that at that point, lift, and this wave of compassion come over me. And I saw it and I felt it go out to the rest of the world. And I knew I had to tell everybody that childhood trauma has a biological impact, not just an emotional one. So that was the motivation for me to make the film. And there's a lot of laughs because it's Darrell Hammond, so don't be scared. It goes, and I really worked hard to edit a good balance of tragedy and comedy, such as life. When I started to make the film, I thought I was making a film about Darrell Hammond. And now I realize I was making a film about all of us. And so I look forward to speaking with you after, with Dr. Robert Pinus and Darrell Hammond. So enjoy the movie.
Long sleeves, it's 100 degrees, but it covers up what is underneath. Sunglasses on, but there's no sun outside. You say the reason is 'cause the light hurts your eyes, and you walk into a door again last night. Funny how that keeps on happening when they ask about it. You just lie about it, and you had the hurt, and you had the pain. When they ask how you doing, you say you're okay, but the tears and lies cover all the scars, and they won't see how broken you are. Keep it in, keep it in. Don't let nothing show. Keep it in, so no one will know. Keep it in, hide it away. In school, he just keeps to himself. He goes home every day to a home that is his. Learn not to fight and you learn not to fear, but the bruises inside are the ones that don't heal, and they hit you more the more you ask them why. And you're too ashamed to tell us so. When they ask about it, you don't talk about it, and you had the hurt, and you had the pain. When they ask how you
I want to thank Michelle for the extraordinary gift of this film that teaches us all about the devastating effects about childhood trauma, and thank Darrell for sharing a very personal story with all of us. I'd like to welcome up Dr. Robert Pinenews, who's a professor of psychiatry at the David Geffen School of Medicine here at UCLA. He's one of the world's experts on childhood traumatic stress. Welcome, Dr. Pinenews, and thank you to all of our participants. We will be taking questions. If you would like to ask a question, please write it down on the index cards that we're going to be passing out. We won't take any questions directly from the floor. And just a quick announcement that there is some filming going on for CBS Sunday morning show, so the back of your head may appear in the film. Thank you so much.
I'd like to welcome to the stage Darrell and Michelle, the director.
Thank you for this enormous bottle of water.
Yeah, it is. And it's glass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my privilege to be here tonight and to moderate this discussion with the three of us and to take questions from the audience. There's enormous humanity in this film and in the response, and we know the great courage and fortitude to be able to describe one's life like this and the narrative skill of the director, but and it certainly is designed to let us understand with the reluctance that we all feel in watching it, I'm sure at times, in the complexity of the world of the child who's tortured by parents and the terrible toll it takes and the traumatic consequences, the long-term challenges and hard work it takes to regain a self that's not tormented from the past and can live torment-free in the present. But I really see this film, and I'm going to start with a few questions, but I see this film, and especially the comments you make towards the end, as a call to action. And it's really a call to action to open up opportunities for abused and traumatized children to have their inner life heard and to gain trauma specialized care, which you put a very special note about. I just have to say, for the past 20 years, I've helped direct the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, which is a federally funded program with now over 100 funded sites in the United States, whose congressional mandate is just to do what you said, which is to increase access for children and families who are traumatized and ensure the highest quality of care for them across the United States. So I think that this is a testament to the importance of that mandate and mission, for which all of us feel a deep responsibility. If I can start just with a couple of questions for both of you. I'm going to go to the end and ask you that there are two parts at the end. First, when you just say it's just a house, which probably says so much more and all that it encompasses at that point.
Why does that move you?
Because it's good. Because I think that the enormous challenge for someone who's had the experiences that you've had is to extricate yourself from what happened. And to extricate, you sometimes have to revisit in order to extricate. And there's something about saying it's just a house, which is an indication of starting to do that. Then you also say, in a sense, I feel I won, or I think I won. And there is, if you can, I'll answer your question before you ask it about why I'm asking that, but it is because there is a triumph. And in fact, the hard part is for someone not only to extricate themselves, but then to reclaim what belongs to them, which is the capacity to be loved, the capacity to love someone else. A triumph, you actually need your anger in a constructive way to say, I'm not going to let what you took from me be robbed from me. I'm going to work to regain that. So I hear that in both comments. But I'd love to hear from you.
Was that a question?
What's
the question?
What you meant by it's just a house.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to give Michelle credit for creating this movie. And the way that it's being used around the country to raise money for children's advocacy. And, you know, Michelle and I went to Congress and did some, I thought, pretty good, really good things, raised some money for. She thought it up, so it's her brainchild. But so when she started wanting me to go in the house, my doctors didn't want that to happen, you know. So there was about a 4-year period, I believe, where I trained. We trained to walk back in. So that, in a way where I didn't shrink and I didn't freak out. You know, and it was weird because you're walking in there and you're thinking, you know, that the walls are going to be bleeding and there's going to be ghosts roaming the floor, and it was a horror house, a house of horror, but the people living there were lovely. Just a house. It was the people that were in there, you know. It's crazy. There was, Michelle graciously spared my more, when I was kind of rattled a little bit, she didn't show that to everybody, but it was victory. I mean, I was tortured in that house. And to walk back in years later, strong. I mean, like I said, I got my baggage. I definitely walk with a limp, and so to speak. I'm not cray anymore, as they say in New Orleans. I'm moderately cray, and and I work at it, and I have a lot of good days, and some days are still very challenging. But that's what it was like. It's just a house now. The blood's not there. The people aren't there. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah, I didn't really flip out about the whole thing until I got back to New York. When I suddenly, I don't know, maybe I was dissociating or something. It was a life or death moment for me. Like, if I didn't survive that, so my doctors didn't think I would, but anyway, that's all I got.
Well, I'm sorry to start with such a difficult moment, but it was extraordinarily
Let's go right
poignant.
to the stabbing scene, Darrell. Let's get right to that bloody knife, eh?
So let me ask the other side of it, which is that your relationship with Dr. K, and it's very meaningful and for both of you, and he talks a little about the side of what he felt he needed to bring to that relationship. This is for all the children and families that try to enter into treatment, and you said that it's not that easy for someone like yourself who never trusted. So what helped on your side of it? What helped you to engage in that with him?
Well, he gave me my Hallelujah Chorus moment. He gave me what I'd been waiting for my whole time on earth, which was, this was not my fault. when he told me this, I was this way because of something that happened to me. That was the hallelujah chorus moment of my life. Of course, he had to teach mental illness is not an airborne virus. It comes from somewhere specific. It has a story, and in the story, you're the only one without power, but there are other people there, and something bad is going to happen to you. And as Michelle has pointed out, the real crime is being expected not to tell. So, point one, mental illness, not an airborne virus. Number two, the monsters hide right in the light. They quote scripture and they go to church. They go to bake sales and they raise money for the needy. Point three was monsters don't make, because once we identified the perp, then the anger came, then they had to get me through the anger. So point three was monsters don't make themselves, and I'm like, who cares? But then point four was you have to be a victim before you're a monster. I know that there may be some credible data that one or two of the world's most famous human monsters were just born like that, but I haven't seen it yet. I've never seen any evidence like that. I don't know if you have.
So for you, one of the pioneers in the field of attachment, John Bowlby, wrote what was a toss-off article in a small journal that people in my field hold on to dearly, and it was called Knowing What You're Not Supposed to Know and Feeling What You're Not Supposed to Feel.
Wow.
Which was really captures what you're describing as well. And the only thing I'd add to it to your extraordinary description is that it leads to a privatization of the self, an increased private side to you beyond what people might normally, so that because you've now gone public, you've crossed that private line into the public, you've taken an extraordinarily private side. All of us have that, but yours enlarged by having to live with and not even quite knowing what it was you were living with, and now made the transition to help others through a public description. So you really have tried to really bridge what was imposed on you with that private side all those years ago.
Well, Michelle, let's let her talk too, because she's really brilliant.
I'm fine.
She's so smart, and she dreamed all this stuff up 8 or 9 years ago when she came up with the idea. But I'd like to hear her. It was her brainchild, and she convinced me that this could help people. And she sold me on that idea. And I thought, I'd love to do that if I could. I mean, why not? I feel bad about my life. I mean, I was able to meet 5 presidents and accomplish everything I wanted to as a professional, make all my dreams come true. But my personal life, I was woefully inadequate. And I have lots of deep regrets. And if helping someone maybe makes me feel like the mistakes I made had meaning, and that I'm learning from them,
Well, later I'll talk a little about some of what you're just saying, but as you said, Michelle, maybe you can say something about what you described to me about the making of this film and the way in which you structured the film to try to create a certain feeling within the audience that paralleled Darrell's own experience.
Well, so Darrell's life was a mystery. And so I didn't want to tell what happened to him right off the bat. I wanted to try to create even a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of that mystery, a bit of the experience, have it be experiential in some kind of way of, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with him? What's going on? What was it? Who was it?
Was it like a whodunit?
Yeah.
Which it was in my life,
Yeah. So because it was a mystery for him, Painful for, and then living to be part of the system that we so have to change. That he was misdiagnosed for 40 years. I mean, can you imagine like thinking for 40 years, I'm schizophrenic and you're not, and I'm bipolar and you're not, and
psychotic.
Yeah. So, it comes off, when he's doing the play and he's saying shrink number 3, and shrink number 11, and shrink number 3, but it's not funny. It's funny, but not funny. We really have to, that's what we've been trying to do. We went to Congress twice and spoke to them the first time, and it was when the Kavanaugh hearings were going on. And we thought they were going to cancel, like, they don't have time for us. They're literally doing the hearings. While we were, witnessing Dr. Ford being shamed for telling the truth, and we're walking down the same halls with all the press and the,
right up behind that wall.
Yeah, and we it was for the opioid. It was a bill for the opioid crisis, and we helped to add 9 provisions for trauma-informed care to the opioid bill, and a month later it got signed into law. So, whoever goes for treatment now, because we believe, Darrell and I believe strongly that trauma is the root cause of addiction. 100%, we believe that.
Yeah, well, I'm getting that from the world's best doctors. That's where it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, let me say a point about that, just as new information. So, the correlation between addiction and trauma is pretty well known, as you said. But what we've known more now is that part of what's happening to a child when they're traumatized is well stated in the documentary, and by you and by Dr. Kay and by Bezel, is there's a lack of a protective shield. One doesn't know. It's very people that you rely on to protect you are the very ones who are injuring you. So the child grows up, as you point out, without your one safe kind of place, but not knowing safety as a child. Well, we now know that if you make an animal afraid, the parts of the brain like the amygdala light up, things you hear about, but if you give that animal a way to keep itself from having something bad happen, can do something. It's not just that the fear parts of their brain go down, they become less afraid. Their reward centers light up. So achieving safety, being able to achieve safety isn't the same as feeling less afraid. So, and achieving safety is the same reward centers that have to do with addiction. So it doesn't surprise us that children who have never known safety, never known the real reward of safety, might be very vulnerable to addiction because it's using the same part of the brain. Because regaining a sense, when we work with children, treatments with children always look different in some ways than adults because almost a good portion of it is understanding where they still, even inside, feel unsafe, let alone in the real world, and help them to reestablish a sense of safety psychologically for themselves and with those around them. And all our treatments geared towards that, as well as helping them with their symptoms and their trauma, and equally then with the developmental implications, the insults to their development that have happened. Because once you get addicted, you also lose a lot of development. You lose out on, when you treat someone who's had as many years of addiction as you had during teenage years and on, what no one notices is the things that you didn't get to accomplish developmentally, the omissions. It's very hard to notice those as a person. And it takes years to kind of, at a later age, to try to then learn those skills and those competencies that you didn't get to learn because you were drinking all the time. So the addiction and trauma also leads to huge developmental insult, which takes a long time. With young children, we actually map out those developmental deficits, not just the symptoms, and we help direct attention to them. to try to help them recover developmentally as well.
Could I say something
Yeah,
about
please.
that? So I'm a recovering addict of 34 years, and I'm a trauma survivor, although I never called myself that until Darrell told his story, and then I had the courage to say that too. So as a teenager, I didn't know I had developmental trauma brain. So I was told in school when I couldn't focus that I was stupid. And nobody asked me what's going on in there, what's going on at home, or what's happened, anything happened to you. And I've been going around speaking a lot, and my thing and what I say is that children who have developmental trauma brains, which is like maybe their cognitive skill when they're triggered is 2 years old, or their social skill and their brain is 1 year old, is that to look at these kids like they have 2 broken legs, they're wearing casts, and we're telling them to run. Teachers and parents are telling them to run, and then we shame them for not being able to run. And, you know, we talk a lot about, when we do interviews, what it's like to live with trauma, what it's like to be to live as a trauma survivor with the trauma, about being triggered, when we get triggered. And, you know, I believe we really have to teach parents and teachers that when we get triggered ourselves or kids, that we have to regulate before reason. And we do it the opposite. We try to reason with the kid who's freaking out in the candy store, like, if you don't stop crying, you don't get your ice cream, and you're going to go into isolation, and you're going to... And it's like, no, I can't reason when I'm triggered. Nobody can reason with me when I'm triggered.
The limbic system always
first.
wins.
Yeah. And I really think that's really important, those 3 R's, to regulate, relate, and then reason is last. I think, God, if we just did that in school and with parents, with each other, it would be huge.
But Darrell, I have to say, you have both sides of what happens. You have and describe the hypervigilance and the reactivity to reminders and where it sends you. But the other side of that is that when you're getting tortured, injured, we now know much more about what it means to dissociate at those moments, which is just the opposite. Heart rates go down. Your part of the prefrontal cortex overregulates. It actually shuts you down, essentially, protects you from the pain, protects you from what's coming in. And people, when they're cutting, are often in those states. So you had to deal with both, the very vigilant side and the part that was actually overly controlling you. And you never know which is going to stimulate what, which makes for a very, very chaotic and difficult time. And it often goes unrecognized, that part where you're actually dissociating. And the part about that that's so difficult is that you had to return to what happened. But during those experiences where you're protecting yourself evolutionarily to the pain and horror and the sense of it's happening to you, dissociate, it makes for an experience that isn't coherent. And what we do with children is to help give them more coherence so they can use it better to extricate themselves. So I'm saying it's both sides in that experience that makes it troublesome.
I think it's really interesting that Bessel van der Kolk, who's one of the world-renowned trauma doctors, said, when I asked him, what is trauma? What is the definition of trauma? That was my first question to him. And I had no idea he was going to say this. When your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma. When your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma. I thought he was going to say, well, you have to be hit this many times, you have to be sexually abused this many times, and that is what would create trauma.
Should we take a few questions?
You look like you have a lot of questions there.
a lot of questions. There were two questions that came up from two different people right away about, could you say some more about your sister?
She doesn't. I guess I shouldn't speak publicly about her because she doesn't want to be spoken of publicly. But she suffered maybe more.
So we can respect her privacy. I think that's a good enough answer.
I think it's a difference in degree, I mean, but I think she suffered more. It was worse. I still remember her. Yeah. Yeah. Is that okay?
There are a number of comments here that are just thanking you for your bravery, for your courage, for sharing your story, for the value that's not questions. And for you, Michelle, taking on, adding your skills to being able to make that as moving as it has been in this documentary.
Yeah, that's the thing. If the movie sucked, we would just be wasting our goddamn time tonight. But
it's a team effort.
As it was, and she's created a masterpiece that will live for a long time, I believe. I can't watch it. I mean, she knows. I didn't watch. I don't remember. It's not good for me to watch it, even though the story has a happy ending. So I usually wait out in the lobby before these things. But anyway.
So there's a question here about the yoga and the meditation, and a little more from you about how that has been a helpful part of what you addressed your sleep problems from it, but helpful to you.
Well, I just started studying meditation out here. This is my first week. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to add one more damn thing. Like, some part of me is like, hey, they did the crime, I'm doing the time. The hell am I gotta do meditation? But out here in California, some of the people that I know swear by it, and this woman that's the David Lynch Institute say it's incredible. And I did it this week, and I did it 6 times, okay? And 4 of the 6, I fell asleep before 10 minutes was up. Now, that's remarkable because there is not a chemical. There's nothing you can do to put me down. Like, I can't sleep. I fell asleep on their couch. Boy, I don't know how to describe it. Is my mind playing tricks on me? They're saying that it rewires your brain chemistry, right? I don't doubt it. I was thinking things that my brain couldn't come up with. Like, what the hell? I still don't know what it is yet, but boy, I'm going to keep going back. And now, of course, it's the Christmas break now, but after the break, we're going to do meditation plus a form of yoga that goes with the meditation. It's pretty wild, right?
Has it kept helping your sleep?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm sleeping.
Because you had nightmares for so many years.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally I have a nightmare, nothing, but not often. I have weird dreams, like anyone else. Like, Nick Nolte is my third base coach, but he's also a frog who, drives a beer truck for the mob. I have those kind of dreams. But I don't have those things where the door opens and someone walks in the room.
So know
knife anymore.
So know that we use the word like nightmare, but we know that when something horrific has happened, it doesn't take as much as happened in your childhood, but even children we've worked with who were on a playground being shot at, that have nightmares afterwards, that those nightmares happen not in REM sleep, the normal kind of sleep that you talk about where you dream, but they can actually have what are called stage 4 nightmares. They can walk in their sleep, they can vocalize, but it's just like you just described. It's a short moment being shot at again. It's not elaborated. It's not like a normal long nightmare. And you wake up, and you can wake up and your heart rate is, in adults, 140, 150. You can't get back to sleep. I mean, so we now know how to use medications in certain ways to reduce that, along with the kind of thing that you're doing, because it has that kind of profound effect. And it's not the normal sleep disturbance, even nightmares that people talk about, when it often grows out of traumatic experiences.
Well, just think, in your sleep, while asleep, you are feeling the terror just as much as you did when it happened. I mean, it's just the same. You know what I mean? Like, I used to sleepwalk. And one time I woke up across the street in one of our, the neighbor's car across the street. I had even in my sleep, sought protection. I walked across the street and got in someone's car. The hell? When someone has forced you to be silent for decades, when the time is right and you're empowered, you're likely to start blabbing your mouth. You're likely to start yelling it and want to tell everyone that will listen, like, here's what happens in these homes. It was happening right under your nose. Sometimes after you left the barbecue, and it happened again. You want to, and then Michelle came along and was like, come on, let's blab. Let's blab.
But it's more
let's blab about this. Let's raise a ruckus. So I was like, all right, I'll do it.
But the reason I said it was a call to action is that you weren't just telling your story. You had a very constructive goal in mind, which was to make a difference in the lives of children out there. Because you make it very clear that if there's a child on a railroad track, somebody should be asking why you're there, or if they're coming. So you make it very clear that somebody should be paying attention early, and do something not only in protection, but in treatment, which we know a lot about what to do.
There was this one time I went to the doctor in Cocoa, and I had these internal injuries, internal bleeding, and they, this doctor's looking right at her. He was like, "What happened?" She said, "I think he was playing on his bike or something." And deep down inside of him, where the best his higher angels live, he knows that's a lie. But back in those days in the South, white, segregated, Bible Belt, you fill out the moral checklist. They cut the grass, the kids have clean clothes, they appear to be fed, there's no marks on them, there's no bruises, and they go to church and they're pretty good at quoting the scripture. Well, if you check off all of those, you can be Beelzebub. Nobody's going to look. Season 1 of True Detective on HBO is about that. Like, people won't look at you and will defend you. It's creepy.
But even stronger than that, children can be made to be a hidden accomplice. They can be told what to say. We've been in many situations of homicides where they've been made to give an explanation that wasn't true. So the perpetrators made them into an accomplice. Yeah. A horrific feeling for a child to have to live with afterwards, for somebody that they loved, in this case, somebody might have been killed.
Martin Luther King, in one of his speeches, said, truth crushed to earth will rise again, and it will. Those kids, someone is going to pay for that. The perp's not going to pay. Perp's not going to pay. But someone's going to pay. Maybe a gas station attendant that gets shot. Maybe someone in a knife fight is going to pay. Maybe someone that tries to love us is going to pay. How difficult and painful that is to love somebody like me. You know, that, I mean, I'm better now, but it's my girlfriend over there. But man, I'm no day at the beach.
I got to say something about what we know, because there is a kind of myth in America that by the time you reach adolescence, that if you're like you just described, you're sort of incorrigible. Nothing can be done. You might have just lock them up. But what we know now about teenagers who've had the experience and are close to what you said, doing the crime at the gas station, is that they're extraordinarily responsive to intervention. They walk with their feet. We have major programs in juvenile justice, residential homes for people that have had a long list of things that have happened to them, and they participate for 4 or 5 months to start to get better. That they're in alternate classrooms in our high schools and can't participate, that get themselves starting to be able to study again, and then can be tutored. So we have enormous confidence that teenagers can actually help themselves at that point and would wish to if given the opportunity. Horrible thing in this country is that we really, even though starting to pay a lot more attention to early childhood, really undervalue and under-resource those adolescents at a really important time that they can really kind of restore their lives and their developmental progression. And we should be doing a lot more of that.
I think Michelle knows a lot about these ACE tests. Yeah,
the Adverse Child Experiences Study.
We visited the National Children's Advocacy Center.
They're a big partner of ours.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, it's weird to be at UCLA since everything that saved my life came from here. It's so strange.
Wow.
Like I'm alive because of the stuff that comes out of here. And were you guys, one time when I did something called brain candy. Did that come from here? Where you can look at the electrical activity in someone's brain. Anyway, it was something I had, with Dr. K.
Well, we have people doing that here.
So they put your brain on the screen and you can see it. And you see the electrical activity. And on the right side of my brain, it was either I can't remember which side was which. One side was almost dark. Why? How do you know it's the left?
In the movie.
Oh.
The left.
I told you I can't watch the movie. The movie is just too disturbing for me. Oh, did I tell the story in the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. That's just wrong. But anyway, I still like the story.
It's a good story.
But I mean, never mind. I'm not talking anymore.
I just wanted to say if we're doing educational screenings, if anybody would like to show this film, you can go to crackedupmovie.com, and we have all sorts of ways for you to host a screening, whether it's in your home or children's advocacy centers or an organization
I think the
or
David
schools.
Lynch Institute wants to use it for stuff.
Yeah.
Have you? There is a question about schools, so maybe you could say something about whether it's been used in helping schools to understand how to have more trauma-informed programs as well.
Yeah. So we the film's been licensed probably in about 50 schools around the country, and we have a study guide to go with it, a discussion guide to go with it as well.
50 schools.
Yeah. It's happening,
Remarkable.
dude.
Because, when I wrote the book, someone was like going, hey, if this saved one life, would you write it? You're talking about a national thing that they're into.
So
we did
this NPR show, Allison Stewart, it's called All of Us. 20 minutes, we talked about trauma. And when I got back to my office, there was an email from a woman that said, I was about to commit suicide, and I had the radio on, and I heard you and Darrell talk about trauma. I've been misdiagnosed. I've been relapsing with drugs and alcohol, and I always knew it was trauma. She said, in my soul, like Darrell said in the movie, in his soul. So it was like she used the same language. She said, in my soul, I knew I had trauma, and I'm going to redirect my therapist, she said, and I want to live.
I mean, I had a woman in Sarasota come up to me and say, I saved her child's life because she found out what was wrong with her kid from the book. And come on, that's kind of hard to beat as life experiences go. You know, somebody like me that has a lot of regrets and something else.
The other thing, I think, because when people learn that the biological impact, that it's not just an emotional impact. Somebody said to me, the film freed me from believing I was born broken. She said, now I understand why I've been having these stress responses my whole life, being triggered, where it's coming from.
But I know we're going to come close soon, but I need to add another element. I know we've used the word trauma considerably, but in our work, we also know that bereavement and loss and grief, especially under traumatic circumstances, and suicide and homicide and others, takes an enormous equal toll, and often they're happening within the same families or the same communities. So many of our programs aren't just directed at trauma. They're directed at trauma and bereavement and the interplay of those in the lives of children and families. And we feel that those even strengthen the kind of programs. You in your book, you certainly give attention to some traumatic grief and friends who committed suicide. And
3.
Right. And we work with children who've had parents commit suicide. Or in the opioid, we're trying to pay attention not only to trauma-informed services for those who may be at risk, but the kind of bereavement services that are needed for those families who have suffered those deaths that really isn't being offered in the United States as yet.
I would like to honor Nancy Rubin, who is here. Please stand up, Nancy, who is founder of the Dee Hirsch Mental Health Centers in Los Angeles and Suicide Prevention Center that she recently gave me a tour of, which is the most leading, cutting-edge, brilliant center, and I think the first and only center in the world that in the front there is the first sign in the world that says suicide prevention right there facing the highway. So thank you, Nancy. And I just wanted to thank Cammie Gordon for making this connection and for, and I'm here because of Cammie. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank both of you. I think we're going to bring things to close. But again, I want to reiterate, it's not just that the documentary is moving. It really does move people to start to improve our care of children and our care of families. Then that is something that you can obviously both feel very proud for.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our participants for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us this evening. And thank you all for coming and being here and supporting the Friends of Semel. Thank you so much.
Oh, I tell you, that's why I don't watch the movie. It's very hard.
Being honest with your emotion at that point, so.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't help it. Thank you. It's really cool to be at UCLA.
It's cool to be at UCLA.
Yeah,
we've been doing this work the children since the 1970s.
You want us to look there?
CBS News.
We were probably the first group in the world. You have to understand, starting up until the late 1970s, no children who had had an experience like yours were talked to as a child. People told you not to talk to them. So we were the first program here at UCLA that started to develop ways to talk to children directly.
It's so funny when Michelle approached me. I really thought, I like the idea of helping people and saving lives, of course, but I really wanted to catch bad guys. I wanted to draw attention to that these people that are doing these things aren't doing it by accident. Like if a guy shoots up, what Naval Station today, was that it?
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody made him.
Yeah.
No, I didn't want to go into it. Feel about the intergenerational issues within your family. Go back to your family and your father's combat. I set up one of the first programs in the Vietnam War for the children and families of returning combat soldiers who were sleeping with knives under the pillows and scaring their kids, and nobody knew why, unless you can get them to talk about it early so they don't grow up. And so we know a lot more how to do that for a family like this earlier than not just for the children. Hopefully that makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody wants to say hi to you, Michelle. Hi.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought you
Thank
were.
you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm involved in NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and I want to get. I know I met you, and I follow you on Instagram. You are. Yes. Do you know how? I don't know if you know how gorgeous you are on screen. You are so handsome. Your pictures, and I hope you're still doing your creative part of you.
Sometimes.
I know, that's where I met you. Because I thought I met you at something else. I didn't realize that you were. Oh, did you?
Oh, that's so great. Well, it started at the same place when I was in one. I said, yeah, yeah. That's a big statement. Stephanie made it happen. I know, but you were like on it. Just from watching like the moves so I know it's so like you're welcome.
It's called the descending intimacy. That's what it's called. That happens when you're on the descent, you know, you're safe, take a gauge off. And
I know, but we never did it. You're I feel like you're how are you? I have very No, that was so good. Well, not bad because she was here last week. Oh, okay. Yeah, probably coming back. Okay, so you're like, okay, you can make it. Yeah. And you probably go there. And it's like, okay. It's coming along so great. Yeah, no, we're very excited. She's amazing. I mean, you should watch a bunch of her talk. Yeah, of course she did. Yeah. She's fabulous. Do you follow Highway? Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah. Yeah. She's amazing. Yeah. And we have eventually 6, 8 people that are waiting to hear from. No. Making her talk. But now she's listening. Just introduce you to the blog. Me, Nancy, Vicky, Stephanie, she's filling me in on the wow. Oh, the wow I am right. Wow. No, we're a wow team. You're a wow team. And we've all fallen so in love with each other. Did I tell you that I worked at Big Sugar? As one of the designers, yeah. Yeah, I did a bunch of rooms there. It was, a lot of people did, but it was a thrill, yeah. Handing them the keys to their room was like extreme makeover. And I cried. Oh no, I gave them the keys. I opened the door. Betty from Ralph Red. Okay, well, one day I'll show you the pictures. I always tell them that. Anytime. No, it really does. You know what the best part about it is that I get to be a third whole time. We invent reasons to hang out. Wait, no, seriously. Have you seen People magazine? I mean, we talk every day almost. Like 2 different times a week. There's like something like a committee meeting, but we're on the phone like every couple days. Yeah. If not every day. Did you wear your purse last night? Oh my God, you're grounded. No, she was going to loan me one of her purses, but I didn't want anything to happen to it. Because it's breathtaking. The problem I'll have to loan you my phone. I'll give you the purse. So I have to give you the purse. So I had to make a choice. Purse. So I talked to her last night. We're talking about like world peace. And then I said, "Are you wearing your phone tonight? Are you wearing your purse tonight?" Totally. It's the definition of ADD. No, the save the date is going out December 10th, which is like in a minute. Yes, but only for sponsorship. But the save the date, absolutely. If they want to donate money, it's only only for sponsorship. The ticket and the other donations, January. But you should send your friends save the day. Like that's what I do. The minute I have it, but put all your friends on a BCC. Yeah. Well, if you're sending it to 100 people, you know. And I'll tell you something that else happened to me, and I am by no means an aficionado of computers. You can only send like a chunk at a time. You can't do 100. Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I didn't know that either until it says no send. Right. Just do like 20 at a time. Yeah. Do it in batches. Yeah, do it in batches because otherwise it's a no. Then your friend says, "Well, I didn't tell you to do it right," and then you're in trouble. No, really, I sent it.
Terry and Besser.
That is really good news. A couple rooms or 4 rooms?
Before they trash them.
No, don't say that. Because I'll take those Ralph away.
I was there when they undid the unveiling.
Wasn't that powerful?
It is still beautiful and it's much appreciated.
You got new carpets and everything.
They're doing as well as they can with the. Yeah.
But I'll bet you, I'm wondering, that the residents who moved out and redid their rooms are more appreciative than, let's say, new residents that come in. They just expected it to
Well, it's
be.
been a number of years, so.
Yeah, it's been quite a few
So
years.
people don't realize that well, before they did any remodeling, at the new building, before it went, it was just like all one space.
Wait, there's a new building?
Oh,
I mean, you took over the building next door?
Yeah, before
Okay,
they converted that into a sanctuary.
Right, so she knows. Oh, yeah. I shaded it, it was so much furniture. It was a furniture store. Oh, what? Yeah. To be continued. Yes. Let's have 5 steps. I'm so sorry you don't have 5 days. That happened. Thank you. I'll come next time. Absolutely. I met Jimmy Savage 4 days a week. Cammy, love you guys. Love you. We'll talk. Okay. See you soon. Okay. Bye, dear.
Yes. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Really extraordinary. back a few days ago. Ooh, I love that too.
Okay. Now we've got, let's look at this. What an amazing collection of women. How wonderful. You like it standing up to like that?
No, see, she's the director. She's directing you.
Oh, you want that way? All right. Well, that's why you're a film director and I'm not.
Not mom. She broke her foot, but she is disabled. Yeah, but they went to Phi in May. Yeah, they go all the time. So in addition to knowing my son Todd, who came with me. Yes. Paul Todd.
Well,
Okay. I'm here, honey.
Who died?
Our Akita. Evita, you make fun, yet I'm the one. Attempting to do some good. Or do you really want a neighborhood where people piss on your stoop every night? Bohemia, Bohemia's a fantasy in your head. This is Calcutta. Bohemia is dead. Dearly beloved, we gather here to say our goodbyes. Here she lies, no one knew her worth. The late great daughter of Mother Earth. On these nights when we celebrate the birth in that little town of Bethlehem, we raise our glass, you bet your ass to La Vie. Days of inspiration, playing hooky, making something out of nothing. The need to express, to communicate, to going against the grain, going insane, going mad. To love attention, no pension, to more than one dimension. To starving for attention, hating convention, hating pretension. Not to mention, of course, hating people, mom and dad. To riding your bike midday past the 3D suits. To roots, to no absolutes, to absolute, to choice, to the village voice, to any passing fad. To being an us for once, instead of a damn La Vie Bohème.
Hey, mister. She's my sister.
So that's 5 miso soup, 4 seaweed salad, 3 soy burger dinner, 2 tofu dog platter, and 1 pasta with meatless balls. Ew. It tastes the same.
If you close your eyes.
And 13 orders of fries. Is that it here?
Wine and beer!
2 handcrafted beers made in local breweries. 2 yogurt, to rice and beans and cheese. 2 leather, 2 dildos, 2 curry vindaloo. 2 huevos rancheros, en Maya Angelou.
Emotion, devotion to causing a commotion. Creation, from passion to passion to passion.
When it's new to Sontag,
To Sondheim.
Anything taboo.
Ginsberg, Dylan, Cunningham, and Cage, Lenny Bruce, Langston Hughes,
To stage. To Buddha.
the Buddha,
Papa Neruda. To
why Dorothy and Toto went over the rainbow to blow up NTM.
La Vie
Sisters?
We're close.
Brothers!
Bisexuals, trisexuals, homo sapiens, carcinogens, hallucinogens, men, Pee Wee Herman, German, white turpentine, Gertrude Stein, Antonioni, Bertolucci, Kurosawa, Carmina, Burana, to apathy, to entropy, to empathy, ecstasy, Václav Havel, the Sex Pistols, ABC, to no shame, never playing the fame game,
To marijuana!
to sodomy, it's between God and me, to SNL,
Waiter, waiter,
La Vie
In honor of the death of Bohemia, an impromptu salon will commence immediately following dinner. Maureen Johnson, just back from her spectacular one-night engagement at the 11th Street lot, will perform Native American tribal chants backwards through her vocoder while accompanying herself on the electric cello, which she ain't never studied.
And Mark Cohen will preview his new documentary about his inability to hold an erection on the high holy days. And Mimi Marquez, clad only in bubble wrap, will perform her famous lawn chair handcuff dance to the sounds of iced tea being stirred. And Roger will attempt to write a bittersweet evocative song that doesn't remind us of Musetta's waltz.
Angel Dumachinan will model the latest fall fashions from Paris while accompanying herself on a 10-gallon plastic pickle tub.
And Callums will recount his exploits as anarchist, including the tale of his successful reprogramming of the MIT retro reality equipment to self-destruct as it broadcasts the words
Actual reality, act up, Fridays!
Excuse me, did I do something wrong? I get invited, then ignored all night long.
I've been trying, I'm not lying. No one's perfect, I've got baggage.
Life's too short, babe. Time is flying. I'm looking for baggage that goes with mine.
I should tell you,
I've got baggage too.
should tell you baggage.
Wine and beer!
Easy tea break.
You,
Me, you.
me.
Whatever you do, I'll do it too. Show me everything and tell me how. You don't mean something, and yet nothing to me. Oh, I can see there's so much to learn. It's all so close and yet so far. I see myself as people see me. Oh, I just know there's something bigger out there. I wanna know, can you show me? I wanna know about these strangers like me. Tell me more, please show me. Something's familiar about these strangers like me. Every gesture, every move that she makes me feel like never before. Why do I have this growing need to be beside her? These emotions I never knew of some other world far beyond this
trees above the clouds. Oh, I see before me a new horizon. I wanna know, can you show me? I wanna know about these strangers like me. Tell me more, please show me. Something's familiar about these strangers like me. Come with me now to see my world, where there's beauty beyond your dreams. Can you feel the things I feel right now with you? Take my hand, there's a world I need.